My guest today is Jodi Barrett, who completely transformed her life, like a complete 180. She is the CEO of KB Stronger. She's an author, a speaker, a motivator, and a mentor. Welcome to the show, Jodi.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
So, at the age of 38, you did a complete change. You changed lanes. Life
Yeah.
had thrown you some curveballs.
Mhm.
Can you tell us what was going on at that time?
Yeah, I was like, if I had to describe how I felt at that time, I would probably say I felt I was in turmoil. And it wasn't a great place to be because I was just, how you, like when I got married, I was going to be, you know, I wanted to be so good at it, like good at all of it. The wife, the mom, all of it. And then I was like, you're trying to be so good at something and you think you're doing probably pretty good, but when it doesn't feel, something doesn't feel right. But so I would struggle in my head and my heart with what's going on? How come I'm there? And because I find too, as a mom, for me, anyways, you know, you sacrifice things. And I don't know if sacrifice is the right word. You just feel like maybe that's part of what you're supposed to do. Right. And then I had the one day where I was like, I felt like maybe there was more for me. And again, that's kind of where the turmoil for me was, because I'm like, I had that big debate of, because I have three kids, and I was like, was my adjusting everyone's life for myself, am I worthy of that? So that was my big turmoil at that time, you know.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. And I feel like I certainly can too. And is it a mom thing? Is it a woman thing? What is it that we feel guilt for wanting more for ourselves? And yet, I think we both know that when we can fill our own buckets, we can be so much more to everyone else, our family, our coworkers, our neighbors, our everything.
Yeah.
And yet we struggle.
Yeah. And I feel like maybe we're getting better at that. I'm hoping we're getting better at that, because I'm like same thing. I'm like, when you take care of yourself, you can take care of others better. But I think we get caught up in a lot of things, and maybe that's maybe that's life's journey where you have to learn that. Or maybe we can teach that to our, I'm hoping that I can teach that to my kids, my younger nieces a little bit, if I can guide them. And I kind of feel like they're years ahead of themselves in that aspect. So
Absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth. I think if there's anything I hope that we can teach our children and the younger generation, that really that's the beauty of taking care of yourself in all aspects, is that we can be more. And there's no rule that just because you're a mom or just because you're a wife or just because you're this or that or the next thing, we have to define ourselves and limit ourselves into
yes.
who we can grow into.
Yeah.
So, amongst all this turmoil, what kept you going?
I think I'm a very resilient person, and I at a younger age, I was very active. I learned right away without learning that whenever I moved my body, I felt better. I don't think I understood that until I got older. And but I look back on things that I used to do, like showing up and going to the pool to swim before my kids even got up out of bed. And I would have to be up out of the house at 5:45. I'm like, it wasn't just, mid morning, but it was looking back and going, okay, sometimes I navigated with movement without understanding how much it helped me. And now being able to, educate myself a little bit more and doing what I do, I can see that I kind of had implemented, and I had that habit habitually for probably since I was quite young, actually. So I feel like that got me to the point. I always talk about my gym reflection moment, where I stood in the gym, because I think my training got me to the point where I actually brutally had to look at myself that day in the gym. And I talk about it because I remember it so clearly, like it was yesterday, where I looked in the mirror and there was a big disconnect with my mind, because I looked and who I saw was a really strong woman, but I didn't feel that way. And figuratively and literally that day, I didn't feel strong because I couldn't lift anything in the room. And I actually got up, and that's the day I left. And that's the day I decided that I had to figure out a way to leave my marriage and, figure out what changing lanes was going to look like. So
clearly you had, this very healthy underlying coping mechanism, even though you didn't realize it, as you mentioned.
yes.
But when we're in the depths of the yuck of mental health and struggle and all this stuff, it's so easy to turn to unhealthy mechanisms, right? We see this all the time. It's easy. It's
Very.
easier in a way than picking up the weights or going for the runs or doing all the things. So why did you choose fitness?
Well, the fitness that I was putting in, I wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't say it was the healthiest, because I was overtraining.
Okay.
So, but I'm always grateful that that was my habit, because, yes, there's bad, you can overtrain to the point where you hurt yourself, where it just becomes, too much. But it was something I had to recognize. And I think the day when I actually couldn't lift, I feel like that was part of the overtraining too, where I was kind of like, I was like tired, and I was like, couldn't lift, and I knew I could, but it was like, I watch people that when I have clients, when they're in my space, I can always tell when life is heavy because they won't lift as heavy. Everything looks hard to them.
That
And
is really interesting.
yeah, so I always say to people, now I'm online. So now one thing I always usually reiterate every time before I go and do a live class anyways, is to get them to ask themselves what's going on. And because I can't, I'm never with you, I don't know how you're sleeping. I don't know where your stress level is unless you're, sharing that privately with me. And some people do, some people don't, but it affects how you will lift and how you train. So then I just tell you to kind of scale back a little bit, be the movement, not necessarily stress on the lift, the heaviness, right? Because it changes. And when, sleep and stress hold huge amounts of
Yeah,
what
I
we're
don't think I
doing.
realized that until maybe the last 10 years of my own life. What an impact. I kind of saw all of these things as separate
Yeah.
compartments in my life,
Yeah.
um, when in fact they're all so interconnected.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love your tagline, strong body, strong mind. So we've just started digging into the connection between the two, but can you dive a little bit deeper into that?
I would love to. I think they're interchangeable. When I write it, I'm like, oh, do I put strong body or strong mind? Because I feel like sometimes your mind has to be stronger than your body, and sometimes your body will be stronger than your mind. And I think, again, I go back to that day where I had a strong body, but I didn't have a strong mind. And I had to work on that, and I had to work on that inner strength. But I think movement for me, and what I always talk about it, is it's not just the movement. If you pay attention, you work your mindset with it, it'll encompass everything. Because like you said, it's not just, you can't just take a compartment and put it over here and it not have a connection to something over here. Everything's intertwined. And sometimes, you're going to fill this compartment more, and sometimes you'll fill this one more. So another thing I do talk about all the time is how much training you're doing. And when I built my website, I'm like, I built 2-minute program or 2-minute like movement, 1 minute, because you get something in, and then I go back into like how you make a promise to yourself. If you make a promise to yourself that day, I'm going to move today, and then it's 9 o'clock at night, and I always encourage somebody to pull out like a minute, do 2 minutes. Because then you're just checking that off, that you were true to your word. Because
Mhm.
it's so important. Because if you say you're going to show up for yourself, you need to show up. And then again, the mind and the body, you're saying to yourself, you're going to do it, and you do it. And sometimes the psychology behind that is if you do a minute to 2 minutes, sometimes you're going to kind of go, oh, well, I'm here, right? I feel pretty good. I'll do a little bit more. Or maybe you don't, and you put it away, but you get to say that, you know, you did what you promised to yourself.
And I think that's huge in creating more confidence in ourselves, right? I had a crappy day or a busy day or whatever it was, but I did the thing I said I was going to do. I can do this.
Yes.
I call these things 1% shift strategies.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what we're doing in our lives. It can be fitness, it can be eating better, it can be meditation, it can be anything. Just find a 1% shift every day.
Yeah.
Because over the course of 100 days, what's happening? That's a big change,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think too, like you say, like just that 1%, and we talk about when you're in turmoil, it's probably not the best. You're not going to be the most efficient, right? Like I think when I went to Arizona for when I closed my studio down, and I went for 2 months. When I got there and I had a panic attack because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I remember thinking about the 3 things that I had. And they were my 3 healthy habits, because you can deep dive down into that hole really fast. And I would say if you have, just a little bit of good habits to hang on to, go there and just grab onto them, hold on to them, and, just work them, right? Keep them with you.
So what are those 3 habits for you?
For me,
Yeah.
they're my gratitude.
Mhm.
I have a journal right here. Every day, every morning. It's out here. Usually it's by the bed. I'll write down, whatever I can think of in the morning that I'm grateful for. And I always say I have some of the same things I've had probably for 8 years on the same page. So I do gratitude because it allows me perspective for my day. So it sets the tone. If you were to go through my journal and you go through some harder times, you may open up and read it and say, I might have just simply been happy for today. As basic as that. Or, like just something to set the tone for my day. So my gratitude always, movement. If I don't have a kettlebell with me, I do my push-ups. I do my 100 push-ups a day throughout the day. I can do them anywhere, anytime. And I call it my morning pause when I have my cup of coffee. And I just have that morning sip where I just kind of go, and it doesn't have to be long for me. It's just that moment of, okay, here I am. So those are my 3. Those are my 3 things that I use to keep myself grounded. And they're not hard. And I always tell the people, I'm like, they're really simple, because when you are going through stuff and your stuff is hard, you don't need hard things to help you navigate. You just need some really basic, simple things.
And I couldn't agree more really with gratitude, because even in the worst situations of life, there is always something to be grateful for. And you're right, it switches your mindset, it switches your perspective. After we lost Katie, I remember it was hard pulling out the gratitude tools, but I remember even just grasping. I was grateful for clean sheets. I was grateful for food in the fridge and a roof over my head. But it gave me something to hold on to, and it gave me a focus. There are some really great things in my life still. Mm-hmm. So that's a fantastic practice. Yeah. Let's switch gears a little bit, because this is really, I see where you shine, and that's around the area of resistance training. Now, we are talking to midlife moms who might be wondering why this is an important thing at this point in their lives. And I think my limited understanding is that as we age, resistance training actually becomes more important. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yes.
Can you expand on that and help us understand why?
Absolutely. So when we go through, when we start to, usually in our 30s too, is when it starts, our bone density starts to decrease and our muscle mass. When we get a little bit older, our muscle mass decreases. So we're just fighting to, maintain and just the functionality of our body. So it doesn't have to be super heavy, even what you train, but you should always have some type of weight training in your life, just for the functionality and the benefit, the health benefits that you have for your body. So that's probably the simplest way, because you think bone density, we want strong bones, right? And your muscles. Your muscles are incredible because it's your how your body functions. I always like when I get talking about muscles, I kind of get really excited because I'm like, not only are you building your muscles and your health of your body, you build your confidence, which again goes back into that inner strength of, I love when I remember one client said to me, she said, I was coming to lose weight. And she's like, and I did. That's what I wanted. But she said, I never actually knew what the word strong meant.
Wow.
Right. And I sat with that because I'm like, because I think sometimes people think strong is like lifting like 53 pounds overhead or something, like a heavy weight. But I think as a woman, and I can only speak because I am a woman, that when you are able to do a push-up or lift something above the head with two hands and then maybe one, like that feeling is such an empowering feeling to be able to be strong. You ever think about the word strong? Like when you think of the word strong, what do you think usually?
I honestly, just where I'm at in my life, it's resilience. Like that inner strength is really what I
Yeah.
think. But having said that, I also kind of picture it as being a multifaceted thing, right? Like to be
Mm-hmm.
resilient, you have to be strong in all different areas.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And
just
muscle burns more calories, isn't that right?
yes. Yes. So then you're more efficient, right? So the nice thing with training, resistance training, is you're burning when you train it, but then you're burning hours later.
Yeah.
Right. So when you run cardio, like you burn when you're doing there, but then the difference between that is when you adding a weight, you're still going to burn calories.
Well, and our
So
muscles are what hold us up, right? So as we
yes,
age, right, that
yes,
that helps us with our balance and our overall strength and our
yes.
posture. So there's just so many benefits.
Yeah. And most people, if they want to change their body shape, if you want to change how your body shape looks, you have to add a weight to structurally change that. I'm not I'm not saying you're going to walk in one person going out another person, but it's key to changing.
I think there's a mindset too, and I like going back years. I've lifted weights for years, but I think women think, oh, well, I don't want to be big and bulky. But when you lift weights as a woman, we just don't have the testosterone to build the big bulky muscles that men can, and that muscles actually make us look sleeker and that lean look that women like. So it's
Yes.
don't be afraid to pick up the weights, ladies.
Don't be afraid. Absolutely not. I would say though, because I've come across this, we had this discussion at the fitness gala here in Calgary about, you know, people being concerned about bulking up. I think it's important to validate that person, how they feel.
100%.
Because if they feel like they're going to get bulky and that's something like a bigger muscular look, maybe there's a history there when they've exercised a certain way. Maybe they have gotten that way, because everybody has different types too. So I strongly encourage everyone to pick up a weight. I feel like if you are concerned about that, I feel like then you just reach out to a professional. You can, connect with me and have that conversation of how to train so you don't feel like that going in and going forward.
Good point. Good point. We are all unique bodies, that's for sure.
Yes.
So, do you have any other habits or rituals that have helped your mental health throughout the years?
I have to think on that. Um, Trying to think of some. Internal dialogue's been huge,
Mm,
a huge place. A lot of work I've done on that. You know, again, when you're in a bad place and turmoil, you tend to beat yourself up a little bit more. It's we're actually just talking about that. We're just in my group that we have right now, we're doing consistency challenge, and we're talking about internal dialogue, how we speak to ourselves. And um I've learned over the years it doesn't benefit me at all to speak poorly of myself. When I do, I don't like, it's very short-lived where I correct it really fast. And I always remind myself that I use this. If I'm sitting on the couch with my best friend, would I speak to my best friend the way I just spoke to myself? And it's a pretty quick switch to go, no, sure wouldn't. That wouldn't even come out of my mouth. I wouldn't even imagine that thought in my brain. So I'm like, I always think be your biggest cheerleader, because everybody needs to be lifted up, and we do so much better when we come from a good place. And I don't think that means that you walk around with a big chest and you think you're all that. I just think it's where you get confident in what you can do, and understanding that if you're not confident in something, it's just a place you can learn and a place for growth. So I think that's huge, internal dialogue.
and I think what we're talking about here is really being kind to ourselves. Like it's not being
Yes.
conceited, like you say,
Yeah.
just being kind and giving ourselves grace.
Yeah.
I caught myself the other day and I literally said, "Oh, Lisa, you dumbass." And I just made a silly decision and, like it was something really minor, but
Yeah.
and I still do that, but I am definitely catching myself more. And it's like,
Yeah.
geez, Louise, like, come on,
Right.
we know better than this.
And I think that's important too, just noting that, because man, we're never like, I remember my daughter when I was we were first going through divorce, and I hit up the self-help section in chapters all the time, chapters and Indigo now. And I remember her saying to me, Mom, she's like, Mom, are you ever going to be out of the self-help section? And I remember I looked at it and I said, I hope not. Because the minute I think that I'm 100% good, I probably definitely need to be back here. So I just
Isn't
feel
that
like it's a work in progress.
Yes, so agree. I think that, we are here as humans to learn and grow, and the learning and the growth comes through all the hard stuff, frankly,
Yeah.
right? And we don't
Yes.
quit growing, really.
No.
I think I realize that the older I get, there's
Yeah.
so much more growth to happen.
Yeah.
So we've kind
So,
of woven mindset through this discussion a lot, but what are your thoughts on mindset and mental health?
oh, I think it's fantastic that there's so much more talk around mindset and mental health, because I think always when I think about it, if I ask the question, are people struggling more now than they used to be? I'm not really sure. I would say yes, but I think we're more aware and more conscious. And when we're more aware and we're more conscious, we see it more. It's kind of like one of those things when you're, maybe you're thinking about having a baby and everybody you walk by, it looks, pregnant, right? So you bring that into your space about, mental health and mindset. I think what's super important now is that we're starting to tap into, like for me, the physical training. I always say it's not about a kettlebell. That's the vehicle that gets you to where you need to go. But it's kind of like the driving force behind your physical and your mental mindset. So I feel like if you can start to tap into those things, then you're going to be more resilient. Because I think that's what it's about. Because life's going to hit us. We're all going to have moments where life's going to hit us. I remember when I did the retreat with the SUP vets in Mexico, and I remember one of the Navy SEALs saying, life is like a wave, the ocean, like the heartbeat. He's like, we're talking about the heartbeat in the water. You know, you wait for that big ride, that wave to catch, and when you're on it, it is just brilliant. And then you go down, and then the next one, you just like, you know, everything's everywhere. You just crashed. And I think it's about creating the tools so that you can handle both the highs and the lows and the things in between. So I think your mindset is key in all of that.
I'm a big believer, as the more I learn about a growth mindset, it's fascinating to me that there's people who just understand that there is no such thing as failure or mistakes. They're just stepping stones,
Yeah.
right? But if you don't have that mindset and you fall flat on your face, as we all will at certain parts of our lives, that it's just like, oh, okay, I guess that's not the direction for me, or oh, I guess I gotta, get stronger at that, or oh, I need to work on this, or even as we see students in the classroom, gee, I guess maybe I should have studied for that test better, right? But there's that growth mindset that there is no such thing as failure, just stepping stones. I think that that is a big part of a healthy mindset as well.
Yeah. And I think too, when you talk about the kids, because I don't know if they still do it because my kids are older, if what they have in the school right now for do they fail, do they pass, right? Yeah, I don't know, but when I was there, you failed, right? I mean, there was things you failed at track and field. They only had a first, second, blue, you know. And I know as hard as we try to protect and make everything equal, I don't think things can always be equal. And there's gifts within that so that your kids learn what failure feels like. Because it's, again, your life's journey that you build upon that. So when, something goes wrong, you know how to cope a
Yeah,
little bit better.
I think you've hit on a big thing. My husband and I call it the soccer trophy syndrome. And I think our kids grew up in that era where everyone got a trophy. And while I totally support inclusion and
Yeah.
never making anyone feel bad or anything like that, I think that as humans, we do need to know that, gosh, that team, they just played better than the rest of us. Or that person, at the Olympics, not everybody gets a medal. There's, a gold, there's a silver, there's a bronze, and that we have to be okay with that, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's just something to explore, and it's something that'll be interesting watching as our kids grow up.
Right.
How have you become so resilient? Because you are the poster child in my mind of resilience.
That's funny. I was thinking about that this morning because when I was on speaking with another person the other day, and they asked me that same question. They're like, man, when I read your book, they're like, most of the things that happened to you, if they happened to a person, they probably wouldn't have gotten back up again. And they're like, then he's like, there you are again, going again. And I sat with that like this morning for probably about an hour, and I was thinking what it was. Because I think people get to choose. You have a choice, right? Just there's your mindset. And I again think when I was little that I learned you get to choose. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how I think, and sometimes I'm so like, when you meet me, I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. Like the other day, I went through one of the doors, when you push on the doors and it turns around. I don't know what those are called. I was so excited. And I spoke that out loud. I'm like, I love these things. Oh my God, am I 12 years old or what's going on? But I think love has a huge part in that. And the choice, and I don't know if that's going to make any sense, but for me, I love life. And even if it looked bad, there is something in the day that I find so phenomenal that I simply get to exist. And if I have a really crappy day, and I have bad days, and I will sit, because I'm a ground person. When I have a bad day, I will sit literally on the floor and I will cry because it's just how I release. But when I go to bed, I remind myself, I get to do tomorrow. I hope I get to do tomorrow. And I think just playing that over and over, I think it's the love of life that allows me to be so resilient, because I do think, you know, everybody talks about aging, and it's such a thing. Women, we want to age, but we don't. And I had a couple comments on, you know, the aging process. And I was like, you know what? It's such a gift, such a gift. So I'm like, I'm not going to stress about that. I'm just going to move and love my body to my best ability and just enjoy every day. So I think resilience has come from mindset 100%, and just the love of, you know, being here and being able to try to share that and try to share that light with other people.
I love that so much about you, Jodi. You have a fitness app, you have online programs, and so many fitness related resources, and your book. Where's the best place for people to go to find you?
Find me to do the training, kbstronger.com. And then I'm on all realms of social media. And I am honest when I say, please just reach out and say hi, because I love connecting. I have people on my app, some like, or even my training. I'm like, you can connect with me as much as you want or as little as you want. But yeah, I'm a people person. So I love to spend time and connect with people.
Fantastic. It has been a pleasure, Jodi. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to you, the listener, stay well and be resilient.